By looking at matcha colors, you can actually tell a lot about the matcha powder. Certain steps in the production process give the matcha powder its legendary green color, and when these steps are skipped, it can take on this less appealing yellow color. In this video, we're going to walk through what makes this green color and why it's important when it comes to evaluating the quality of a matcha tea. Before we get started, it would really mean a lot to us if you could give this video a like and subscribe to our channel for future tea videos. We have hundreds of videos on a wide range of topics, but this video will be focused on the color of matcha tea. Without further ado, let's get started. First, let's talk about how the green color is produced. The matcha green color comes from the chlorophyll and theanine in the plant. Just like other plants, the tea plant produces chlorophyll to facilitate photosynthesis. When you shade the tea plant, it's forced to produce more chlorophyll to compensate for the lack of sunlight. Matcha colors are particularly green because the plants used for high-quality matcha have to be shaded for 3 weeks prior to the harvest. During this long shading process, the tea plant is really pushed to its limits and it maximizes the chlorophyll, yielding this dark jade green color. Why does the difference in matcha colors matter? While matcha colors don't have a direct impact on the flavor, they tend to tell a piece of a larger story. Higher quality matcha powder tends to have this richer green color because it comes from long shaded tea plants and it's made from the younger sprouts of the tea plant. These sprouts are the sweetest in flavor and they give the matcha a smoother and rounder taste profile. After the leaves are harvested, they also have their stems removed. This actually improves the matcha colors even further. When you look at a tea leaf, or most leaves for that matter, you will notice the leaf itself is a dark green color, but the stem tends to be a bit yellower. If you were to grind up the leaf into a powder without removing the stems, it would take on more of a yellowish color. For this reason, while matcha colors aren't a perfect indicator of matcha quality, they can tell you a lot about how the matcha is produced. Let's talk about high-quality matcha versus low-quality matcha. In the tea world, there is perhaps no greater difference between high-quality tea and low-quality tea than with matcha. High-quality matcha is a thick, rich, and flavorful green liquid, and low-quality matcha is a bitter, coarse, and brown liquid. Not only are the matcha colors completely different, but the flavors are different as well. Here, we will briefly discuss the two different types of matcha teas. High-quality matcha is used to refer to ceremonial grade, although that term has no real definition. This matcha is meant to be consumed plain, and a lot of work goes into making it. It comes from the first harvest of the tea field, and it's made from the youngest sprouts. This maximizes the nutrients in the tea. The tea plant is not harvested after the fall, so it has all winter to absorb nutrients from the soil and releases it to the fresh sprouts at the springtime. That's why these sprouts are so flavorful and nutrient rich. The caffeine content is also higher in the sprouts. The tea plant uses caffeine as a defense mechanism to protect itself from insects. As a result, it needs to produce more caffeine to defend the younger, more tender sprouts compared to the older, tougher leaves lower down on the tea plant. The teas are also shaded, which not only increases the chlorophyll content as mentioned earlier, but also the theanine and caffeine content. Theanine is the amino acid that gives green tea its smoother and sweeter flavor. When the tea plant is exposed to sunlight, it converts this theanine into more bitter catechins to protect itself against the UV light. As a result, leaves that are not exposed to sunlight will maintain more of their theanine and therefore more of their sweetness. These high-quality leaves then have their stems removed, a step that is skipped for lower-quality matcha teas. This improves their nutrient profile, caffeine content, and matcha colors. As we mentioned before, when the yellowish stems are removed, the matcha powder takes on a much greener color. Finally, high-quality matcha has to be ground in a large granite mill. There are other ways to grind the tea leaves into powder, but this way produces the finest grade of powder. Using a smaller mill would make the matcha much more coarse and less enjoyable to drink. As you can see, the color doesn't necessarily affect the taste, but the production of the matcha tea affects both the color and the flavor, so as a result, matcha colors can be a good quality indicator. Low quality matcha. This is often referred to as culinary grade matcha, as it's meant to be added to matcha desserts and other culinary creations like lattes. During the production of this matcha, certain steps are skipped, so the end product is not as good. The color is also more yellow or even brown. Not all of this matcha is bad. We have found a later harvest matcha from Mr. Masuda that works great in lattes, which we call the latte grade matcha. When you add matcha powder with oat milk and sugar to make a latte, it doesn't need to taste super smooth. In fact, you actually want a tea that has some strength to it so you can taste it through the latte. That's why the latte grade matcha works great here, and it's a good way to save money. This tea is also produced without the use of pesticides or chemicals, which is very important, particularly when it comes to powdered teas, as you are consuming the entire leaf. This latte grade matcha will have a more yellow color, as the chlorophyll content is lower, although it still works great in a matcha latte. Is a light matcha green color a good thing? There are variations in matcha color within high quality matcha. For the most part, they should have this darker jade green color, but occasionally you will find some high quality matchas that taste great but have a lighter color to them. This could have to do with the cultivar or tea plant variety. A cultivar like Yabukita, which is the most common cultivar for Japanese green teas, takes on a lighter green color, but this does not mean that it is lower quality. While these matchas tend to be cheaper, a lot of tea drinkers appreciate them for their lighter, more citrusy taste profile. So if you see a light green matcha and it's from the Yabukita cultivar, it may not be low quality. It may just be an attempt to capture a different taste profile. What are the different matcha colors and what do they mean? Brown matcha. This tends to be the lowest quality matcha. Even when buying cheap matcha for lattes, you should never really be using matcha colors that are brown. This signifies that either the matcha is incredibly low quality or that it has gone bad. Yellow matcha. This is generally what you get with a lower quality latte grade or culinary grade matcha. This matcha is very low quality and really should only be used for matcha baking or maybe lattes if you plan on adding a lot of sugar. The flavor will usually be quite bitter and tough to balance out even with the added ingredients. Dull green matcha. A dull green matcha is usually suitable for a matcha latte, but may very well be too bitter to drink plain. As we mentioned before, it is okay for the matcha to be more on the bitter side if you're making a matcha latte. These more bitter and grassy flavors actually pair kind of well with the sweetness of the oat milk and sugar, so it ends up working out. You can also save money because these matchas tend to be much cheaper than their premium counterparts that are meant to be consumed plain. The important thing with matcha, even if it's just for lattes, is that it's produced without the use of pesticides or chemicals. When you consume matcha powder, you are consuming the entire leaf and everything that was on it, so make sure you go pesticide free. Bright green matcha. This is generally where you start to enter the premium matcha territory. As we mentioned before, a lot of top-notch matcha powders from the Yabukita cultivar will take on this lighter green color and never really enter the next phase. If the tea is Yabukita, you can evaluate it with a looser criteria. Just know that the flavor will be a little bit more on the fresh and citrusy side. Jade green matcha. This is really what you want to go for when looking at matcha colors. These dark jade green colors are usually indicative of not only premium matcha, but premium matcha from more of the rare cultivars like Okumidori, Goko, and Saimidori. These are reserved for only the highest quality matcha powders, and if produced right, they create a really engaging drinking experience as well as a deep jade green color. This is definitely something to look out for when you're choosing the top premium matcha teas of the world. Do matcha colors change? Matcha colors will change from green to yellow to brown as it's exposed to light, heat, and humidity. The flavor of even a high quality matcha will begin to approach that of a low quality matcha if it's left out, which is why matcha storage is so important. Make sure you keep it in a cool, dry place in an airtight tin that doesn't let any light through. A lot of the tins that these matcha teas come in have a bag inside. This acts as a double seal, which protects the flavor and color of the matcha powder. We recommend sealing up the bag, putting it back in the tin, and then closing up the tin so that it's airtight. You can then put the tin in a dark, cool cabinet and try to keep it away from moisture. If you really want to keep your matcha well stored, you can just put it in the fridge or freezer after it's sealed. This not only keeps the matcha powder cold, but also dry. Just make sure that you don't have any powerful odors in the fridge, as matcha powder has been known to absorb outside odors. Is it possible for companies to color matcha? During our travels around Japan, we have met with a few farmers that have told us that some tea companies use a certain type of tea plant to produce a greener color. We make sure to ask about the ingredients in all the matchas we sell to make sure that this trick is not being used. As we discussed before, making the color better does not make the matcha better, but making the matcha better often makes the matcha colors better. That being said, we like to honor the hard work of the farmers by not taking shortcuts and having the matcha colors be an accurate reflection of the matcha itself. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. I hope this has helped you when it comes to picking out matcha tea by color. If you have any questions, please feel free to leave them in the comments below. Until then, we'll see you next time.